At a rally in Las Vegas over the weekend, which was attended by over 15,000 people, Vice President Kamala Harris pledged to help small businesses by implementing a $50,000 tax deduction for startups. She said she was going to lower costs for healthcare and groceries by taking on corporate price gouging. She plans to give tax cuts to families, build 3 million new homes, and provide first-time home buyers $25,000 on down payment assistance. She talked cogently and sincerely about gun safety legislation. At two much smaller rallies over the weekend, Donald Trump talked about his beautiful beach body. He claimed that his opponent was born mentally impaired, spoke admiringly of fellow fascist Charles Lindbergh, claimed immigrants are going to come into your kitchen and stab you, and promised us his very own version of Kristallnacht, while also diverting valuable resources meant for hurricane victims so he could hold a campaign rally in storm-ravaged Georgia. So, of course, the race is tied. Let's dive in. Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, everybody. It's the Nerd Avengers. Oh, you know what, Brian? Donald Trump is not the only person whose brain appears to be melting. What is?
Well, he didn't have much left to melt, baby.
Well, this is true. I'm giving him way too much credit. Wow. Yeah, and this is what I keep banging up against. The greater the disparity between these two candidates becomes, and it's been this vast chasm since the beginning, the harder it is to understand how this is possible. And I know that we all are capable of analyzing why, but in the moment as a human being, it just adds so much to the stress, the concern, the anxiety. And then on top of it, we get not just the two rallies I referred to in the intro. We get the horrors. I mean, what is happening down south is just I mean, I'm having Hurricane Sandy flashbacks, and it's worse than that. But I was in the middle of that, and that was bad enough. So I can only imagine what people are going through down there. And on the one hand, we get the kind of response that we're supposed to be prepared for, with the Federal Emergency Management Association and the federal government doing its part, the National Guard being enlisted to help, and everything is the way it's supposed to be. And then on the other side, we get lies about it, which we're going to talk about. We get one candidate, endangering human life, which is like a hobby of his now, just to get a photo up. And all of this is kind of, in a way, central to what we are choosing come November.
Yeah.
So, Brian, I know that you're having, again, I can't even, there's so much going on in the world, but for the moment, I just want to focus on what's going on down south as kind of a stand-in for everything, all of the other choices standing in front of us.
We can take, first hurricane I ever covered was Alicia, I think in 1984. 1969, I suffered through Hurricane Camille. It was one of the worst. So hurricanes I'm familiar with. The response to hurricanes has usually been that the state government asks for, sets up ahead of time to provide services to citizens prior to the hurricane, and they're there to make sure that if you're suffering, that you have ample food, water, and supplies. That failed in North Carolina. Then you have, after the fact, they will apply to the federal government for help, and that federal aid usually comes like that. You ask for it, the federal government, the president declares it a disaster, congressional funds are made available. Even this has been politicized this year to the fact that you have, look, I'm upset with the press for that stupid question asked for president, and I think you tweeted it out, Mary, and it just pissed me off beyond all belief. Biden is standing there and they ask him, why aren't you down there? And he goes, look, I got a phone. That's a stupid, and there's no such thing. I've often said as stupid questions. I'll make an exception to that one. That's a stupid question. The fact of the matter is we're well aware of what the president can or cannot do. And if he had gone down there, then you would have the MAGA people saying, oh, he's grandstanding. If he doesn't go down there, then he's not involved. It's all bullshit. The fact of the matter is the state government didn't prepare well enough for it. This also speaks to a very big problem that Biden has been trying to deal with over the last 4 years. It's that one word that we heard every week for 4 years in the Trump administration: infrastructure. The things that failed, many of those bridges were aging, old, and failing. It's not a surprise that the roads washed out. It's not a surprise that the bridges failed. What it is telling is how far inland it was, how close to the mountains it was, and how much this speaks to climate change. We are not dealing with any of the real issues. We're now politicizing human suffering, human tragedy, and instead of dealing with it, you've got Donald Trump trying to grandstand off of it, as is most of the Republican Party. And by the way, folks, if you don't realize that the Republican Party are the ones who are making the decisions in North Carolina. So to bring it all home, I'll simply say that it used to be, when I covered these things, there was a standard procedure that took place. All standards, all procedures have failed. The infrastructure failed. Our government failed. And now they want to blame people who had little to do except trying to clean it up. And they're still trying to do that. You want to blame someone, blame the proximate man, blame the people who represent you in your district because they did not prepare for it. And my heart goes out to those people there. I have one of my best friends, his father and mother lived there. One of the guys I worked with in San Antonio, Texas, who was McKenzie, Tom McKenzie was our sports guy, and he retired there. And he got in touch with me. He says, Brian, we just need water right now. We can't even get water. So, I mean, I'm trying to get the guy water. So him and his wife who are retired can be safe. It's, to me, the fact that you're having to use GoFundMe accounts to help people out, the fact that it's just a total failure all the way around, and it shouldn't be politicized. We should do something about it.
Absolutely. And watch, I mean, unless I'm wrong, the politicization of catastrophes started, well, let me clarify. Natural disasters that are becoming less and less natural because they're being fueled by human activity, which is worsening our climate catastrophe. Was it Katrina when George W. Bush didn't take governance seriously and put a bunch of hacks over it, FEMA, and gave them less funding, and ever since then, like we saw this in Sandy. Chris Christie was governor of New Jersey, and he was mocked by Republicans for accepting aid from President Obama because President Obama was a Democrat. Yep. I mean, these people are insane. And yet now, of course, they want their funding. If Democrats ask, it's socialism. If they want it, it's totally justifiable. So I just want to play a couple of clips. Here's, well, this will speak for itself. Or not. Or it won't speak at all. Who's to say?
Bueller.
Yeah, okay. StreamYard's a little glitchy today. So basically,
it's
Garrett Hackey? Garrett.
So. Yeah.
Our friend Garrett. Sorry, Garrett. He asked Donald, that why are you saying that Democrats aren't helping? And Donald basically does this. Look, we don't know what that means. So obviously he's, of course, taking the opportunity to lie about it. And this is Dark Brandon's response, hopefully.
President and Governor Cooper, Donald Trump has accused both of you of ignoring the disaster.
He is lying. Let me get this straight. He's lying. And the governor told him he was lying. The governor told me he was lying. I've spoken to the governor, spent time with him, and he told me he's lying. I don't know why he does this. And the reason I get so angry about it, I don't care about what he says about me, but I care what he communicates to the people that are in need. He implies that we're not doing everything possible. We are. And you spoke to the governor. I assume you heard the Republican governor of Georgia talk about that he was on the phone with me more than once. So that's simply not true, and it's irresponsible.
And that's Andrew Feinberg, who used to work for me, that asked that question, and that was a well-placed question and gave him an opportunity.
Right, the right answer. He's lying.
Yeah, he's lying. Well, I bring receipts, and this is nothing new. You know, it has nothing to do with Donald's mental capacity, which obviously has diminished, but this is who he has always been. So first and foremost, let's go back to the Trump administration. I remember Sharpiegate. Do you all remember Sharpiegate? It was Hurricane Dorian, I think. Which he wanted to extend Hurricane Dorian through the power of the Sharpie to include Alabama. And so he shows the hurricane's path, and it was from the National Weather Service. And everyone's watching this map and like, wait, what's that black loop that has gone from Florida to Alabama? And that was Donald Trump. Yeah. And you could tell it's a cult because the rest of the Republicans allowed the emperor who has no clothes to literally, folks, I'm using the word as it's meant to be used, as me and Mary and Brian used to use in the 20th century, take a marker and include Alabama. Now, the reason why this is so dangerous is Puerto Rico suffered devastation. California suffered devastating wildfires during Trump's administration. He mocked and ridiculed them. When Alabama was suffering, he said, go back and look. I got this for you. I'm going to put it in the chat. 2019, Trump promised A+ treatment to Alabama and promised him FEMA was on the way because they supported him and it's a red state. As he promised A+ treatment to Alabama because it's a red state, the Puerto Rican governor was fighting to make sure the administration didn't divert its aid to build a border wall. This is how dictators operate. You like me? I'll give you A+ treatment. Your governor criticizes me? Bye, Puerto Rico. Here's a remember he shot the stupid paper towels and gave him paper towels and left?
California, yeah, he tossed them like they were basketballs.
He tossed 2 of them, and because he has weak arms and small fingers after 2, he left. And California, my home state, devastating wildfires, mocked them, ridiculed them, made up a lie about how it was Californians' mistake. That's what caused,
the fires.
They
didn't rake the forest floor, Waj. Come on.
They didn't
Can I add? Let me add just one thing, Waj. But I was in the press briefing where we asked Donald Trump about that. You know what he told me when I asked him? He said, "Well, Puerto Rico isn't a state."
And then also connecting it to what you're saying, Mary, is it is clear. All the evidence, the science, our eyes are telling us that climate change is real. Hurricanes have gone from category 2 to category 5 because of the warming of the weather. We've never seen this type of hurricane activity. President Biden and Democrats said, yes, when asked about climate change, is it responsible for this? He said, yes. To this day, Donald Trump says climate change is a hoax created by China. So I just want people to sit there and think about it. If Trump wins, God forbid, a president is supposed to be the president of the United States of America, right? It doesn't matter. Purple, blue, red states. Trump only cares about fealty and loyalty to him. And as climate change gets worse, and because we're on the wrong side of history and time, this will get worse. Imagine a person like him and imagine an administration that only cares about those Americans that are sufficiently loyal to him. Look at the damage. And so I do hope, and I think Mary, it's a mistake that people aren't bringing up the A+ treatment. I did a tweet yesterday because I keep receipts, and Sharpie Gate, because it directly connects to what's happening right now.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify a couple things. First of all, everything Waj just said about the map that Donald changed with the Sharpie is true. Again, it was because he wrongly said that Alabama was going to be in the path of the hurricane. The National Weather Service had the audacity to correct him. So then the worst thing to me about it was that the National Weather Service and the National Oceanographic, I never remember what it stands for, NOAA, as it's the acronym, is actually changed they lied about it so that Donald Trump's feelings wouldn't be hurt.
National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration.
Thank you so much. Atmospheric, for goodness sakes. So, and as Waj also said, like, this is not that difficult to comprehend. I mean, the science is very complex. We're talking about the difference between weather and climate and changes over periods of time. But basically, the warmer the air gets, the warmer the water gets. Warm water feeds hurricanes. So if you have the Gulf of Mexico at 90 degrees, that is going to increase the intensity and prolong the life of hurricanes. So that's why we're seeing these mega storms. So here's Donald Trump on what he actually quote unquote believes about climate change.
I haven't heard, Mike, they don't ever talk about the environment anymore. You know why? Mike, you say, don't talk about it now. No, it's one of the great scams of all time. You know why they don't talk about it? Because people aren't buying it anymore. It's
that's just a.
Oh, thank you. What's your name, Joe? Yes. Thank you, Joe. It's a lie. It is a lie. And then it's a lie that climate change is a hoax, but and Waj is correct that Donald sometimes he is just a blithering idiot, but sometimes he knows exactly what he's talking about, right? So then there are occasions in which he once again just shows us just his ignorance, and we're going to see what he had to say. His in-depth knowledge as a world-renowned meteorologist about hurricanes,
as well as North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Virginia, Alabama, and Tennessee.
Oh, look, he could rename some states. Big one.
The devastation wrought by this storm is incredible. It's so extensive. Nobody thought this would be happening, especially now it's so late in the season for the hurricanes.
Mercedes, how late in the season is it for hurricanes? Can we see that graphic? Oh, look at that. We're in the height of hurricane season. Yes, we are. We're like 10 days out from the height of hurricane season. So, and I think the worst part about that statement is the fact that he was in Georgia when he gave that response, because, this is not the time, Brian, for anybody who needs an entourage and dozens of Secret Service agents and, God knows how many people in the motorcade to crash a devastated area in which there's no running water, no electricity, and everything's basically been destroyed. So, again, as I said at the top of the show,
to take care of him. That's, Mary.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're diverting resources that could be saving lives.
Nail on the head. Here's a guy who's so enamored of himself, so fucking fueled in his own narcissism, that he doesn't realize that showing up in a place like that and making those people take care of him over their needs is detrimental to what he says he's there to provide. Hell, bullshit. He's there to make a grandstand appearance. I can't tell you the number of times I've covered presidents when they say, look, let's wait. Let's wait because they've got to get food and water. Let's concentrate our efforts on providing food and water and gas. and and transportation and healthcare and education after a week or so. And that's usually been the way it works. I mean, I've gone on these press trips, these junkets to places where there have been natural disasters, and you rarely, if ever, see a president or a vice president there immediately after it happens, because they understand that the resources are needed for the people in the area, not for his fat, flaccid ass standing in a hangar telling us, naming off the states and going, gosh, we never thought it would happen. Yeah, well, everyone's been telling you it's going to happen. In one hand, you're screaming that it's a hoax. On the other hand, you're going, gosh, nobody ever thought it would happen. Well, dumbass, everyone thought it would happen. And he doesn't even understand the very basics, the rudimentary basics of climatology or oceanography or earth science or any of it. And for him to come out and say anything only adds fuel to the fire and adds to the problem. It doesn't help clear it up. And that's you want Donald Trump's whole modus operandi. There it is in one issue, what Donald Trump is all about. Donald Trump.
Yeah, and well, I'm not going to give him credit for anything. I think he knows exactly the how disruptive it is, but that's what makes it even more fun for him, because it's like it's even cooler that he is that kind of clout. One question I have is, why was he allowed to be there? Like, is there nobody in charge saying absolutely not? We don't have the resources. This can happen. I mean, that's one thing, but I want to allude to something you were getting at earlier and then bring it back to something we need to be very concerned about right now. This is from 2019. The Trump administration is pulling $271 million in funding from the Department of Homeland Security, including Federal Emergency Management Agency's Disaster Relief Fund, to pay for immigration detention space. To fund temporary locations for court hearings for asylum seekers along the southern border, ICE would gain $105 million, all from FEMA's disaster relief fund. Okay, now, how much better do we think that's going to be if we put into power a party that promises us in the form of its fascist playbook, Project 2025, that they're going to eliminate FEMA, eliminate the National Weather Service, and also, by the way, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association
administration.
I got it right. Oh, damn it. All right. I remembered atmospheric. They're going to eliminate federal-backed flood insurance, looking at you, Ron DeSantis, and they're going to eliminate disaster funding for state and local governments. It's so hard to choose, isn't it, Waj?
And also, the EPA and also the Department of Education. And also to link to
and women.
And to link to what you said, and this is all, by the way, all in Project 2025. It's not just us musing about it. They've shared their James Bond plan with the rest of the world. So they're going to free up all that money. Okay, where's that money going to go to? Something that should have been immediately disqualifying for any presidential candidate, but because we live in the seventh circle of hell on 2024, where the leader of one of the two political parties is Donald Trump, who's an open white nationalist who quotes Hitler, and the entire party now is in his image. Donald Trump and Republicans have promised to deport up to 15 million undocumented immigrants. That alone should be disqualifying. Now you sit there and think, okay, you're going to deport 15 million undocumented immigrants.
Wait, Waj, though, before you continue, because this is really important, at least he's laid out extraordinarily detailed plans how he's going to do that and fund it, right?
Yeah, well,
right?
Of course not.
The concept of the plan is he's going to create camps. So you sit there and you go, okay, let's just suppose you gave this to like an advisor, right? A consultant. Can you please help me effectuate my concept of a plan of deporting 50 million people? And by the way, I also promised camps. And by the way, last week I just promised to put serial numbers on immigrants. Okay, how are you going to enforce this, folks? You're going to have to get more staff. You're going to have to train them. You're going to have to deploy them. Then you're going to have to create camps. And then you're going to have to make sure that those camps are, have the security. So immigrants, don't escape to like live. And then you're going to have to, put in the serial numbers. Okay. Then you have to create a database. So in addition to the obscene human rights
Yeah, don't forget the ovens. Those will be coming soon.
Yeah, in addition to the obscene human rights violations, in addition to destroying families, in addition to destroying the economy, folks, because if you don't care about undocumented immigrants, as people, if you get rid of 15 million people, our economy overnight will sink. Who will pay for all of this? How will you pay for all of it?
There's the economic question. Yeah.
And also then the wall, right? This is the wall on steroids, folks. And so he was not able to pay for the wall, and people always forget that he diverted emergency funds from the United States government to pay for the wall. The wall was not paid for. Whatever's left is it's a perfect metaphor for the Republican and Donald Trump. It was like this pathetic, barely put together piece of shit wall that literally has stopped nothing. All that funding wasted for it. He's going to have to do the same thing for the camps because he has Stephen Miller and white nationalists. That's his main priority. So all that money is going to get wasted. Hurricanes are going to increase because of climate change, and all the experts who can give us the wisdom and the warning to try to ameliorate the damage of climate change will all be eradicated, or with me and Mary and Brian in the camps.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least we'll be able to keep each other company, right? So
if they let us, they might separate us.
Well, we're smart. We'll find a way. But a couple of things.
But hey, Mary, first, real quick, can I just say what Waj is pointing at? Donald Trump always says he's an economic genius. Look at that issue economically, if for no other reason, economically. What's cheaper and better for the economy? More workers, more input, and by a pathway to citizenship, or you kick them out of the economy, throw your economy into chaos and put them into camps. If for no other reason than the economic, I mean, never mind the things that we care about, like human beings. But if you're the asshole that he claims that he is, he's not even true to his own assholish nature. He's a moron.
Exactly. And there's another piece of this I want to get to in a couple of minutes. But first of all, to that point, I made a couple of videos that are on the YouTube channel that you guys should check out if you want to know the origin story of Donald's actual wealth and then his total failures, especially given the fact that over the course of my grandfather's lifetime, Donald's daddy, he gave him $413 million. I know that's not enough to get by these days, but still, you think it would have given him a chance. So total non sequitur, go Mets. New York City sucks at mayors, but we're really good at baseball. So congratulations to the Mets. Also, and this is actually relevant to the conversation. Happy 100th birthday. That seems like completely
happy birthday to
President
you.
Jimmy Carter. That's extraordinary.
Happy birthday to you.
I love that. That's
guy.
Beautiful, Brian. Yes, Brian is a lead singer, so it should not surprise us that he has that was mellifluous. So I have this, I don't know if it's original to me, but meanness is a preservative. It always seems like the worst people in the world live forever. My grandfather lived to be 93 and he was a sociopath. Jimmy Carter is like one of the very, very few genuine good guys. And there was this very weird article on the front page of the Washington Post today about how Jimmy Carter once wore a sweater. And it's like decades later, still this major controversy in Republican circles. And the reason he was new, his presidency was new, and he gave this literal fireside chat. He's sitting next to a fire. He's wearing a very cozy looking cardigan, and he's talking about how it's very important. This is when there was a serious natural gas shortage. Prices were through the roof. It's important to conserve our resources. So, turn your thermostats down. And it was a very cold winter. And wear a sweater, chip in, do your part if we all do this together, right? And this is why it's relevant. Very former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, said that when he saw this, he was 12, it inspired him to become a Republican. Why? I turned on the TV and I watched Jimmy Carter have a sweater on. Doesn't that mean like play a joke on the sweater? No, he was wearing the sweater, Kevin. Have a sweater on and tell me to turn the heating down. Oh, this is when he gave his record-breaking 8.5-hour speech in 2020. Carter told me that the best days were behind us, that as an American, I had to accept less. That wasn't how I was raised. Yes, you selfish asshole. You were raised to believe that everything belongs to you and you don't have to share resources and you don't have to conserve them for, I mean, so that is sort of the mindset that has gotten us here. And Waj, you spoke about where this is heading, where Project 2025 is heading. And, I think obviously the backdrop always has to be, climate change, because I mean, what it's going to do to the quality of human life, the number of lives it's going to put at risk, the economic devastation, et cetera, and the clock is ticking, right? But in terms of the immediate future, if Republicans get in, the most serious issue we're going to have to worry about is what's going to happen to undocumented workers in this country, and basically the rest of us who stand up against Donald Trump. So this is something he said during remarks at a very tiny rally that he gave, that some people liken to the purge.
Misnomer, because you can steal whatever you want, you can go way above. But you'd see, originally you saw kids walk in with calculators. They were calculators.
Yeah,
they didn't want to go over the $950. They're standing with calculators, adding it up. These are smart people. They're not so stupid, but they have to be taught. Now, if you had one really violent day, like a guy like Mike Kelly, put him in charge, Congressman Kelly, put him in charge for one day. Mike, would you say, he's right here, he's a great congressman. Would you say, Mike, that if you were in charge, you would say, oh, please, don't touch them, let them rob your store. All these stores go out of business, right? They don't pay rent, the city doesn't have money. It's a chain of events. It's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately.
Yeah.
It'll end immediately.
Yeah, it'll end immediately. Just quick context. He's talking about how he blamed this on Kamala Harris, of course. San Francisco made shoplifting a misdemeanor, not a felony, because of prison overcrowding. And also, in what universe is shoplifting a felony anyway? Jesus Christ. I mean, the other thing we're going to have to deal with someday is how punitive we are as a people. Yeah. It's just despicable. So he's lying about that. And he's basically saying, as long as you steal products that are worth less than $949.95 retail. I mean, what is he selling, a watch or something? I don't know. I mean, you couldn't steal the $100,000 watch, but you could steal the $799 watch in this scenario. So basically, if you steal goods that aren't worth more than a certain amount, you're fine, which is why you're carrying around a calculator. It's all insane and lies, but for our purposes, what really matters is, because we know exactly the kind of shoplifter he's talking about. We know the picture in his head of the no.
No, he's the one that wants to get away with it.
Black and brown people. Yeah. No, Donald has been getting away with all sorts of shoplifting for decades now. No, he's talking about black and brown people, right? Yeah. Undocumented workers. So again, the immediate reaction was that he's talking about the purge, which I haven't seen it, but apparently it's some movie that once day a year you can do whatever you want, get away with it. No, he is talking about Kristallnacht, which is what was one event after a long series of policy changes and other things happening in Germany that gave permission to citizens and entities like the SS to do whatever the hell they wanted to Jewish citizens. And that is what we're going to see happening with this immigration detention scenario.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to say that, a lot of people said The Purge, which are a series of movies, Mary,
I'm so sorry. I'll go watch all of them later.
Yeah, there's sequels and there's prequels, and I can't believe you haven't seen any of them. Where
I like the
for a
Rick and
day-
Morty version myself, Waj, but that's me.
for a day in America, a
I'd
full
rather
day,
watch Rick and Morty.
all
Yeah.
types of murder is legalized in America, and you basically just have to protect yourself. But Kristallnacht is a more accurate parallel, because that's when, like you mentioned, the Nazi Germany declared war essentially on Jews, 1938, November 9th. And it just didn't end with Jews. 11 million people were killed by Hitler, 6 million Jews, but also his enemies, Poles, Russians. And when we look at historians and fascist historians, specifically Ruth Ben-Gia, Timothy Snyder, Jason Stanley, for the past 9 years, they have studied the rise of fascism, Nazism in Italy, in Germany. And what they have said is, well, they didn't call him America's Hitler. That was J.D. Vance, his vice president. And maybe Trump picked him, Donald picked him because he thought it was a compliment. He goes, thank you. You're going to be my VP because you called me Hitler.
Yeah.
The person who had a copy of Mein Kampf next to his book, Donald's not a reader. Donald admitted he had that book. The person who uses Hitler's language, such as poisoning the blood when talking about immigrants, Donald Trump. The person who tweeted from, or not tweeted, but posted from his Truth Social account about a unified Reich, that was Donald, folks, just a couple of months ago. The person who dined with the Nazi supporter, Nick Fuentes. The people who now openly host Nazi apologetic historians and Holocaust deniers are Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, who have the two of the top 5 podcasts in America, folks. Just listen to what I said. Tucker Carlson just did it 2 weeks ago. Historian, he hosted a historian who said Winston Churchill was the baddie in World War II. Winston Churchill was not the baddie in World War II. That was Adolf Hitler, the Nazi. So when they tell you who they are, Mary, and I know people don't like this. How dare you make these comparisons? How dare you say Hitler and Nazi, right? Listen to Donald. In addition to that quote you just played, that's on the back end of us spending 15 minutes talking about him creating camps and deporting 15 million people. Anytime a dictator, and Donald has said he will be a dictator for a day, number one, no dictator is ever dictator for a day. Number two, anytime they create camps for one group, other people go into those camps, including every single enemy of that dictator. And when a dictator is telling you that the model for them is Viktor Orban of Hungary, who's authoritarian leader, and they quote Hitler, and their base is very sympathetic to Hitler's ideas and white supremacy, what do you think is going to happen? And so this is the same guy. I bring the receipts. Here are the receipts. Remember the peaceful BLM protest? He said, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. He quoted the old school racists in Alabama. And that's what they did in the 60s when peaceful black marchers marched for civil rights movement. They unleashed water cannons, lynching, violence, pit bulls. That's the model he wants. And it's going to be against black people, brown people. And I always say this to white folks because if we're looking at the polls right now, the reason why this is so close after everything we've said, I'm sorry to say this, folks, white people, white workers, white women, white men. Dictators also go after white people. And what I always want to tell white people is Mike Pence is the whitest, most Christian man on earth. Christian.
Yeah.
That wasn't enough. He literally threw Mike Pence to his wolves because he would not go and effectuate the coup. At the last second, he had a pang of conscience. So sorry for the rant, folks, but I try to warn because I can't, I'm going stir crazy within my own communities right now for a variety of reasons. Lebanon, Gaza, and so many people, especially with Lebanon the last 2 days, I've been trying my best to convince people. People say they're both the same. They're both the same. They hate us. They kill us. They're both the same. And I say, I know there's a lot of pain right now, but they're not the same. Yes, it will be even worse with Donald. Sorry about that.
No, don't listen.
No.
Never apologize. Also, first of all, don't apologize for talking about the reality that the problem is white voters. It's just true. White people should be apologizing because they keep supporting this guy. The majority of white men and white women, slightly different, more white men than white women, but still support Donald Trump. And that's when that's even when he's leading a party that wants women to be second-class citizens with no rights. It is people who refuse to make the very real, relevant analogies to what was going on in Germany are the ones who should wake up. How can you not use those? And how can you not see how analogous this all is, right?
How dare you use facts in this argument? By
Yeah,
God.
oh, I know. Don't
How
come at
dare
me
you
with your
introduce
facts.
facts into this
Forgive
argument?
me.
That's
Forgive me.
But the other, the other problem is Republicans all just being in complete lockstep. I mean, I think there's literally nothing Donald could do at this point that would get Republicans to abandon him. And check this out.
How is that not violent rhetoric?
We have to acknowledge the reality going on in every city in America.
Not answering the
Crime
question.
is
Not answering the question.
That is answering the question,
How
because
is
the reality in America, hold on, Keith, the reality in America is that crime is massively up.
Crime is not massively
Yes,
up.
it
That's
is.
a
You
lie.
can bang the table all you want, but
It's
that's
a
not
lie.
true.
You're lying.
We already know that there are
the
cities
FBI just released data this week. that
This
crime
guy-
is
that
going
guy's a moron.
down.
We already know that.
Oh my God! Abby? Why do you let this man lie on your national
I'm
national
not
television
lying.
like
I'm telling
this?
you the
This
exact
is
truth.
not right.
You may not
You're a
want.
liar,
You may not.
Congressman.
No, I'm
You're
not.
lying.
Because you're lying to the American
Keith,
people
if you
now.
would let
And
me
so I want to be
talk,
respectful of what you're trying to say.
Hang on a second.
Go
If
ahead.
you would just let
Why
me
would you
talk,
have him on your
I will
show?
explain exactly what
Why
you
would
want
you
me
have
to
him on your
explain.
show?
We have the data. The FBI literally put out data today showing that crime is down this year for the first 6 months of the year. But look at the trend line.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, let's look at trend lines. The guy just was like, "Oh yeah, purge, totally cool, Kristallnacht." I mean, this is CNN just has food fights. Like that's its special brand of.
That's good. That's good, Mary. Food fight. That's what it is.
Yeah, and you had
And then that
Jennings on the
has a
same show.
Yeah,
look,
well, yes, it's
Can I-
what they do is they have a bunch of paid hacks, and then they have a bunch of Republican politicians they know are going to lie, and then a bunch of beleaguered people who believe in telling the truth, and it becomes a mess because the moderators either they don't know what to do or that's their brief.
Well, they don't.
Just let it all
That-
implode, guys. And I want to talk about the debate tonight.
But can
That's
I add
what
one sentence?
CBS. Hang on one second, Brian. That's what
Yeah.
CBS wants. Any outlet that says we're going to have two people debating, one of them, as far as we know, tells the truth, and the other one is an inveterate liar. We're not going to fact check. What did we think is going to happen? It's going that they want the food fight. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to something. We were talking a little bit earlier about Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday. I interviewed him about, I guess it's been 30 years ago, and I asked him a question.
When he was
about,
a young man of 70.
Yeah. And I asked him a question about Ronald Reagan, who had made hay out of Christianity and running against him. And it was actually Jimmy Carter who was the greater Christian. I mean, he was a real Christian. And Ronald Reagan was not. And if you want to remember Jimmy Carter, remember him and his wife building Habitat for Humanity. He made the greatest use of his post presidential life more than any other man, and a very Christian man at heart. And I said, how does it strike you that a man who is so inveterately not Christian holds you accountable and try to make you like you're not a Christian? And he said, as a Christian, I cannot respond to that without not being Christian. He said, but if you take a look at what Jesus taught and what these people practice, you'll understand, what they're really doing. But there was something that he said after that frightened me, and it gives you an idea where we are today. He says he wasn't so much worried about Ronald Reagan and his followers, but he was worried about what would follow, because they would have nothing but our floor to look at as their ceiling, and each generation would be a step down the ladder. And that is, I've used that many times when I've talked to people to explain the problems with my profession. But he was talking about the country writ large, and he was telling us where we are today with Donald Trump. And so I said, are you fearful for the future? And he said, as a Christian, I always have hope, which gave me a sense of hope. But I got to tell you, everything that we've talked about today, there is a root cause, and it goes back, and it's what he saw, and it's what we've seen for the last 40 years. What do we expect out of Donald Trump? What do we expect out of his minions? Well, it's what they've shown us. As Maya Angelou said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Going forward, to your point about all of what we're going to see, facts versus fantasy, you're not going to get facts out of Donald Trump. You're not going to get facts out of J.D. Vance. You're going to get an emotional plea for bullshit that people will buy because they have already bought into the fact that they want to believe. They want to believe Donald Trump. They want to believe that you can make America great again, when, that is the most racist statement I've ever heard in my life. Make it great. Go back to the 50s when women, LGBTQ, people of color had no rights. That's what they want. It's not the 1950s. It's the 1850s. Yeah, thank you. That's it. So you're right. When they sit there and talk, it's verbal diarrhea. It's a food fight, because facts do not, like the old attorney said, when you have the facts, you argue the facts. When you don't, you obfuscate. And that's what they're doing. And for those who don't understand obfuscate, look it up.
Yeah. And to that point, after everything we just said and everything we've been saying now for a very long time, part of the problem continues to be that there are tens of millions of people who see Donald for exactly who he is and have seen that all along. And that's why they support him. That's a conundrum we're going to have to figure out going forward. So yes, Mercedes, if we could look at that slide about where the race is, Harris, Trump, virtually tied in battleground polls. How? And
I don't believe that.
I guess the question at this late in the game, what are we, 36? How my hair hasn't turned gray is beyond my comprehension.
Well,
so what is going to shift? I actually think, Waj, that tonight's debate, even though VP debates typically don't matter any more than presidential debates, I think we're in a different. We're just in a different place now. I think that Tim Walz can actually make some inroads here, partially because of his vibe, in a way, his life experiences, his experiences as a public servant, but also because all of the really heavy baggage that Vance brings with him.
I think what Tim Walz can do is he can win over two groups: white men, white women. And specifically, this is why he was chosen. If he can remind Americans there's another path for American masculinity, one that is not beholden to cruelty and misogyny, and that, you can be decent. He has already proven to win over some young white men who have gone all into Trump, right? Especially men, but especially white men. Maybe he can win them over and win over some on the fence. Number two, if all he does is exposes J.D. Vance's cruelty towards women, his viciousness towards women, if he just rinse and repeat, I don't care, for an hour and a half, like just repeats quotes of J.D. Vance, his cruel, weird, mean quotes against women, against childless mothers, that can win over just enough white women. Now, we are still here, Mary, hoping that a majority of white women will vote for Kamala Harris. White women have not gone historically for Democrats since the Southern strategy, only twice. And a poll last week from CNN showed that Trump is 50%, Donald is winning 50% of white women to Kamala's 47%. If that number even gets to 49, I'll be happy.
Although, Waj, just correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that historically the lowest a Republican has gotten among white women?
Around 47. So, and also some other good news for Kamala. A total of 45% of white voters say they might vote for Kamala. If those numbers hold, that'll be the largest number since LBJ. So if we could get that to 46, Mary, 47, that'll be a huge game changer for Kamala, especially in the swing states, especially as the October surprise, as we predicted on your show, was a war, and now the October surprise is a war. So we have 4 weeks left. There's a new war. Bibi wants Trump to win.
Yep.
Iran apparently sent a ballistic missile 10 minutes ago. So we're going to have full out war. That's the October surprise. Will that shift the election? I don't know.
Yeah, where will it shift it though? That's the question. I all I can tell you is that I'm looking forward to the October surprise that is the movie. When
is that coming out? The 11th?
October 11th, and I previewed it, and I'll review it for a salon tomorrow. And if you want to know it, and I like it because while it's a fictional representation of what occurred, in Donald Trump's life, it uses facts, something that Donald never uses. And so I think it can reach some of those people that may be on the fence for whatever reason. But to your point, Mary, I think there's even a greater Waj, I'll tell you, the polling is circumspect, I think, at this point, because in speaking with people like Joe Walsh, when I spoke with him yesterday, and we were talking about this election, he and a bunch of former Republicans, and I'm Joe Walsh, the former congressman, not the guitar player for the Eagles, but when they're talking and trying to.
So glad you clarified that. I wasn't sure.
I feel like I have to clarify that all the time. I could just see Joe Walsh in his painted pants out there screaming and playing guitar for him. But Joe said that and I've run across this anecdotally. There are about a dozen or so in different states, people I've talked to, Republicans, who publicly say they're for Donald Trump because they've lost all of their friends who weren't Trump supporters. And so they're church members and they're afraid of losing their friends who are Trump supporters, but they won't vote for Trump. Doesn't mean they'll necessarily vote for Harris, but it means they're not voting Donald Trump, and they may only vote Republican down ticket. Now, I don't know how large of a phenomenon that is, and I don't know how it influences the polls, and I don't think there's any way to gauge that. But when I asked Joe, who is in touch with Trumpers all the time, being a former Tea Party member and who still goes out and campaigns for Harris, telling Republicans, if you want the Republican Party back as it used to be, you've got to make sure Donald Trump doesn't get in office. And he talks to these people, and he says there are a lot of them, and that's one of his hopes. So I don't know how, and that's one of the reasons why I think the polls are circumspect. But, and Donald Trump, they say, is always polled lower than he's voted. I think he may be polling higher than the vote will show this time. Or maybe I'm wishful thinking.
No. But listen, I mean, polling it's not an exact science, but if you have several cycles in which polls show a candidate overperforming, the polls get adjusted. So, I mean, there are ways to weight things differently. So any poll that hasn't tried to do that isn't worth its salt. So I'm less worried about that, but it's just, again, incredible to me that we're even having to worry. But just briefly, I want to again remind everybody that we're starting our coverage tonight at 8:30, half an hour before the debate, just to kind of pregame it a little bit, see what everybody's looking for. And I mean, I just quickly want to say that I think historically the role of the VP candidate in a debate is to be an attack dog for the person at the top of the ticket. Now, remember Tim Kaine, very, very good senator, an abysmal pick for VP for Hillary Clinton. However, he did that in that debate. Like, I was like, where has this guy been all along? It was really it was almost shocking. I think Tim Walz can do that with even more ease. Like, I think it's totally in his wheelhouse. So, it's just one thing you might be looking for tonight's debate.
I would love to see Tim Walz articulate a compassionate vision of white American masculinity and compare it and contrast it to the cruelty, misogyny, and mean-heartedness of Vance and Trump. And I do believe with him standing next to and up and beside a Black woman and uplifting her will be a great contrast to the rapiness of the Trump Vance ticket. You know, if he could exude that in both his attacks, Mary, but also how he proactively just engages the audience, I do believe some of those white voters in the middle, will shift.
Okay, Brian, one thing you're looking for tonight.
I would, I agree with Waz, but the one thing I'd like to see tonight is an adherence to facts. And when JD Vance goes on a rant, hold him accountable for it. Don't allow him to get away with the crap that Donald Trump's been able to get away with, and do it in a compassionate and positive manner. I think I'll just say that Walz is a fellow defensive coordinator, high school defensive coordinator. He's got my vote for being able to counteract all the bullshit that you're going to get from JD Vance.
Yeah, and I think, you know, part what both of you are saying in one way or another is that Walz's job is to create a permission structure for white people who may have always considered themselves Republicans, who aren't comfortable voting for Democrats, but who really need to. so that's hopefully what we're going to see. So a quick, you know what? Let's get into another news, and then we'll tell you how it's all going to play out tonight.
No, this is a radical left lunatic we're dealing with. By the way, if she wins, it's not going to be so pleasant for me, but I don't care. I really don't care.
Oh, we care, Donald. We care. It is going to be so unpleasant for you. Have fun in prison. And guys, that should be all the incentive we need, right? Donald Trump will be miserable, broke, and imprisoned if he loses. What else do you need to know to cast a vote for Kamala Harris? I don't like
lose.
that is just he has to lose. Like that to me is like that was a mic drop moment.
And bigly.
And he didn't even know it. Okay, so tonight the pregame and the debate will all be in one stream. So join us there at 8:30. During the debate, we will very judiciously insert commentary. You know, we're not going to talk over any of the debaters or so-called moderators. They're not fact checking. What's the point of them? But you know, there are places in which we can provide commentary, which for Vance will most likely just be pointing out how much he's lying. And then in a different stream, we'll be hopping over for post-debate analysis, which was really fun. It was incredible after the presidential debate. I think we went into like 12:45. It was incredible. So please join us for that. Also, please subscribe to the channel. We're trying very hard to grow, and but we would like for it to happen faster. So thank you in advance. Share all of the episodes with people, and we're going to keep doing what we do. So we're going to leave it there. You know, all of the shows to check out. Everything's in the show notes, and we're going to see you imminently. So to everybody who watched and commented, thank you. You guys are awesome. Waj, Brian, you rock as always. And we will see you in about 7.5 hours, starting at 8:30 Eastern. In the meantime, please, everybody, stay safe and be kind.